Tennessee has imposed 3 very significant restrictions on voting. It has passed a stringent photo identification requirement, it has passed a documentary proof of citizenship requirement, and it has reduced the early voting periods in 2 different kinds of elections. We expect these kinds of restrictions to have the greatest impact on poor communities, on communities of color, on communities of elderly folks, and on young students.
Let each step that we make today, let each vote that we cast on this day speak for a better tomorrow.
What we're doing here today is bringing out voter empowerment. The legislation was implemented, it wasn't carefully thought through, and information came out in a very confused manner. Many times people are frustrated, lose hope, and stay away. But we want to get them involved in this process. And many times the only way that we can get this information to the people is through the clergy.
The motivation for passing a new photo voter ID law in Tennessee, as I believe it is in other states, is to make sure that we have the tools necessary to combat voter fraud.
We've unfortunately have a long history of documented voter fraud in this country, and it could make the difference in a close election.
We're not waiting for the government or the Department of Elections and Commissions to come out and educate folks on what they need to do.
Churches are providing resources. They're providing their vans to pick up individuals and take them to registration places to go ahead and get their IDs. Individuals who are working long hours throughout the day. We're trying our best to find means to get them in and get their voter IDs.
One of the things we're finding is that while people are aware of the law, there are some people who have misunderstood and think the only thing that works is a driver's license. You can have a gun permit, you can have a passport, you can have any other form of federal or state issued ID with the exception of a college ID, and any of those work, even if it's not a current ID.
One particular quirk about this law is that certain senior citizens are eligible to have a driver's license without their photo on them, but that is not acceptable under the new law for voting purposes. So up to 126,000 Tennesseans have a driver's license that they cannot use for the purposes of voting.
If you come to the polls, you don't have that ID, you can cast a provisional ballot and you can come back to the Election Commission within 2 days of the election, show your ID, and your vote is cast.
People need to ask themselves, do they have a birth certificate lying around? It is very expensive to get a passport. It can often be very expensive to get a birth certificate.
So the legislature and the governor contemplated that and create a mechanism where it doesn't matter if you're a pauper or a millionaire, you can go to the driver's testing center and get the free photo ID.
For those that are working now 12, 13, 14 hours a day trying to survive on a regular basis, now they have to add in that they have to get voter registration IDs, things have to be rearranged. It becomes an impossibility.
Is somebody want to sign in over here?
You can still vote absentee without a picture ID, so if you're going to be fraudulently voting, then the absentee ballot's the way to go. So I don't think they've really gotten at the problem with these reforms, which kind of begs the question, why did they do it?
I feel that beyond a shadow of a doubt that many of the reforms, although they may have some merit, I think that the gist of the reforms are aimed toward keeping minorities and African Americans from voting.
Those claims were made in 2 federal lawsuits, one filed against the state of Georgia, another filed against the state of Indiana. It's been disproven in the polling place. If you compare the turnout in both of those states to turnout in 2006 when there was no photo ID law in effect, again, the turnout went up dramatically. And in Georgia, for example, the turnout of black voters went up dramatically. It also went up in Indiana. The increase was in fact larger than in many other states who have no photo ID.
Thank you for voting. You're welcome. In its hand.
The vote is the most powerful, non-violent instrument that we have in a democratic society, and we must use it or we will lose it.
Elections are about people. They're about people's voices. They're about citizen participation. And when there are restrictions in place that make it harder for eligible Americans to access the polls, then our democracy suffers. Our democracy is tarnished.
The time is now.
It is important for leaders within the clergy, within the faith community to lead this effort, because we are not called to stand by the sidelines and only pray after incidents occur. We are also called to empower, to engage, to bring forth individuals who have a voice when it comes to election. It is the job of the clergy to empower them to go ahead and speak.